I want to introduce you to a teenager who made the decision to be courageous when she was just graduating from high school in Brentwood, Tennessee. She and her parents had a real clear vision of what they thought the next few years would look like in her life. She'd go through high school, she'd go to college, she'd get a degree, and then at some point get married and start a family. Well, let's just say that God had some different plans for Katie Davis. I'm Dennis Rainey, and this is Inspiring Courageous Faith. Today, I've got a story about this amazing woman whom God has used in fantastic ways to touch lives and change families. Some of you know that my wife and I, Barbara, have an adopted daughter, Deborah. And our love for her has immersed us into taking us near the heart of God, which I think is what God's about when we go near the orphan. It's why in James chapter 1, he talks about this is pure religion, to go and visit the widow in their distress, but also the orphan. Why? Because they're helpless. They need encouragement. They need hope. And you're going to hear a story today that is, I think, exemplifies what we're talking about here in going near the orphan. When we started Family Life, we helped start another ministry called Christian Alliance for Orphans. It was a ministry about foster care, orphan care, and adoption. And in the process, we met a special young woman named Katie Davis. She went to Uganda for what was supposed to be a year-long mission trip in her gap year between high school and college. But then she ended up staying. And she ended up starting a Mazama, a ministry to orphans in Uganda. Now get this. Over the next few years, Katie, as a young, single woman in a foreign country, adopted 13 girls. You heard that right. 13. Talk about an overnight experience in becoming a mom, huh? The book that she wrote was sensational. It was called Kisses from Katie, and it became a bestseller in America. Bob Lapine and I interviewed Katie on our radio program, Family Life Today, a number of years ago, and it's one of my favorite programs of the more than 6,000 that we recorded over 27 years. I'm dividing this story into two parts because you need to hear both stories. Both represent an inspiring, courageous faith that Katie had, and how a young woman from Tennessee ended up as a full-time missionary in Uganda and brought hope and help and the vision for who God is to 13 little girls in Uganda.
On your 16th birthday, that's when you first had a sense that you might want to spend some part of your life overseas, right?
Yeah, it was something that you've been kind of dreaming about in the way that you're young and you dream about these things that will probably never happen. You know, one day I will travel to all the countries of the world. You think that. You also realize that it might not happen. And so it's something that I had been dreaming about. I grew up really, my mom loved Mother Teresa, and so I've read a lot of books by her early on and just thought, I would love that. I would love to just live among people who had nothing and just serve them and share the gospel with them. And so I think by the time I was 16, I was working downtown at a halfway house in Nashville, where women came to, after they had been addicted to different substances, they came here after rehab to get their children back from foster care and kind of rebuild their lives. And I loved to go down there and just be with them. I loved to babysit their children so that they could go to their meetings or their different stuff. And so I think that really grew in me a love for serving people. And I had begun to feel like I'd love to do something like this overseas. And so I thought, my parents might not love this idea, but I remember asking them on my 16th birthday. We had gone out to dinner. That was kind of our family thing. You got to choose where you wanted to go out to dinner to celebrate. And just kind of brought it up and said, hey, I was thinking maybe after high school, instead of going straight to college, I could kind of take a year and just go somewhere, travel overseas, do some mission work. And they just kind of looked at me like, oh, well, and they didn't immediately discourage it. They were kind of like, well, college, probably that's the best idea, but we could look into it. We could see, we'll talk about it more. I don't think we made any decisions that day, but I went home excited about that and started looking up places online. Where could we go? Where could we serve? How could I get involved? What kind of ministry would I want to get involved with?
How did you settle on Uganda?
Honestly, I looked online. I didn't feel specifically called to Uganda or to Africa or to anywhere, really. I just felt called to serve people. And so I looked online and found several different orphanages and emailed orphanages in all different countries and said, I would like to come and visit. I would like to help. I will change diapers. I will wipe noses. I will mop floors. I will do whatever. I'd just like to come serve. And I got emails back from several of them. And one place was an orphanage in Uganda, and they just did a really great job communicating. They had this great volunteer coordinator at the time, and she said, yes, you can come. We accept volunteers of all ages for, any different time periods. And so I went to my mom and said, Mom, do you want to go with me to Uganda over Christmas break? And my mom said, well, maybe,
Your mom and dad were hoping this would just wear off, weren't they?
Sure. Yeah. And I think they even thought maybe if we let her go over Christmas break,
she'll get
it out of her system. And they said, you need to find an adult who will go with you. And I said, okay, but I wanted to go over my Christmas break. And there were great adults in our church and supportive people around me, but they weren't going to leave their family at Christmas and go travel to the other side of the planet. And so, I remember just finally begging my mom, and I'd get her to come sit next to me on the computer, and I'd show her these pictures of the children at the orphanage. And Mom loves people and loves children and used to volunteer downtown with me and used to volunteer at the church with me. And so it wasn't like it was super difficult to convince her to come. And so that was my present. That was my Christmas gift from my mom, was
I'll go with you.
Two pink suitcases and her presents to come with me to Uganda.
And so when you went there and you got off the plane, did you already have a spot you were headed toward?
Yes, we did. So we had communicated with this orphanage, and they took short-term volunteers, and they were very kind and very accommodating. And so we went and we signed up to volunteer at this orphanage for 3 weeks over Christmas break. And I do think my parents had in the back of their mind, maybe this will get it out of her system. This will be this overseas mission trip, and she'll feel like, yes, I did the overseas thing. And I don't think they thought that I would I was just taken. I was absolutely just in love with everything, the color and the language and the people and the simplicity of life and just all of it.
We should explain, you were a pretty typical, normal 17-year-old high school student at this point in time. You were president of your class, is that right?
Uh-huh.
You were homecoming queen?
Yes.
You drove a yellow convertible?
Yes.
You liked shopping for clothes?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Pretty, you could say just an average high school girl. I liked high school life. I liked football games. I liked having my friends sleep over. I liked to go to the mall. I was doing it. I think early on the Lord had grown in me a heart for people that my parents really encouraged and taught me to be kind to people and taught me to love people and taught me that there were people less fortunate. So there were days where I would say hey, high school friends, do you want to come with me to the homeless shelter this weekend? And they would say, no. And I would say, okay, well, that's where I'm going to be this weekend. But I had that. I had a heart for people and I loved people, but I also very much loved my comfortable lifestyle and where I was at. And
to that point, you say in the book that Jesus wrecked your life. You blame him for all this.
Absolutely. I think faith in him sustained me through high school and was instrumental in the decisions that I made. But I remember being in Uganda and wrestling with, you're asking me to be like all the way in. And I don't believe for everyone to be all the way in means you have to move to this other country. But for me, that's what it meant. I think it meant a significant alteration in my lifestyle.
And I think what folks need to realize as you read the New Testament, if you really get to know Jesus Christ, he may not call you to go to Uganda, but he will wreck your life. He will cause you to deny yourself.
Absolutely.
To pick up your cross and follow him daily. And I think sometimes we've kind of put a soft sell on Christianity and our Savior. He comes to take over, to transform, to radically make an impact in our lives.
Yes, absolutely. And so the director of the orphanage we were volunteering at introduced me to this pastor who was the director of a different orphanage of 120 children, all ages. The youngest was 4 and the oldest was 18. And he was short-staffed and he didn't have enough help, and he wanted to start this school and he wanted to start this kindergarten program. And he had a couple local teachers that were going to help him out. And he said, I feel like the Lord is saying that you're coming back and you're going to work here and you're going to teach kindergarten. And I remember when he said that to me, and I was like, well, I'm here for a few weeks and I'm going to go home and finish high school. So, we will keep in touch. I will let you know if the Lord causes me to also feel that way. But I went home and finished high school and would look at the clock like during high school classes and think, okay, what time is it in Uganda? Okay, the kids are going to bed or the kids are waking up, and would just replay in my mind what their routine was like. They would wake up, they would brush their teeth, they would get porridge for breakfast before they would go to school. And just was doing high school classes, but was living in my head in this different world that I couldn't shake.
Now, wait, weren't you, all your friends were talking about we're going to UT next year, or I'm sure there were guys asking you out on dates, and some of them were cute, right?
Yes.
And
one of them was very cute.
Yeah. So I'm sure you were thinking about what life would be like if you stayed here, and some of that had to be alluring and attractive. I mean, go to the UT games with cute guys. That's not a bad thing, right?
No, yeah. I mean, it was. I would not be honest if I said, yeah, it was easy. I just thought, I'll move to Uganda. It was difficult. And there were times when I thought, am I making the right choice? I remember leaving and saying goodbye to good friends and sweet people when I had decided, yes, I will go back to Uganda for a year.
Katie, your parents, when you were 16 and you said, I might want to go to another country at some point, they were not sure what to think of that. When you were 17 and said, that's what I want to do for Christmas, will you go with me, Mom? Your mom kind of went reluctantly. Now you're saying, I think I want to spend a year in Uganda and put off school for a year. Did your mom and dad warm up to this, or did it take them a while to be able to say, yes, this is okay, and we'll support you in this?
They were always supportive. They also, though, out of love, really wanted what was best for me, and really thought like, well, in order to be successful and have a good life and be comfortable, you're going to need to go to college. You're going to need to have your degree to secure a good job. And so they really said like, okay, you go for a year, but no more. Then you come back and you do school and you make sure that you have this good future in place. And they were just looking out for me in the best way that they knew how. They wanted good things for me. And my dad said, well, you can't go live for a year in a place that I have never been. So very reluctantly, he got on a plane when I was moving to Uganda in August, and he said, I'm coming with you for the first week. And I think he spent that first week that they were there kind of trying to convince me, you cannot do this. You will come home with me. Are you sure that you don't want to come home with me when the week is over?
Yeah, I mean, all the dads who are listening right now.
I'm nodding my head. I'm going to go check this place out before I'm leaving my 18-year-old daughter in Africa for a year. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the daddy's love, there's nothing that can compare to it.
No, and as an 18-year-old, I didn't get that. But as a parent, I go, how did you let me do that? I did not understand at all on that side of parenting. I mean, I remember the tears in my mom's eyes as we got on the plane, and I remember the tears in my dad's eyes as he realized at the end of the week, you're not coming home with me. You're going to stay here for the year. That was a huge sacrifice for them to say, we love you enough to say, we don't really understand why this is what you want to do, but we love you enough to say, okay, you can do it.
You know, it's interesting, Katie, the number one obstacle to a graduating college senior coming on Crew staff, which is an organization that recruits a lot of collegians to ministry around the world. The number one obstacle is parents. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that don't get it. To me, it's fascinating that you're not the only one being called to a step of faith. That in the midst of that, the parents are called to put their own belief in the Bible and relationship with Christ on the line as well. When you'd spent a few months in Uganda, you sat down one day. In fact, you write about it in your book. It's Saturday, September 29th, 2007. And you must have been there long enough that you were not only overwhelmed with the living conditions, but also with the needs of human beings, not just a few, thousands of human beings in a country ravaged by HIV, AIDS, factions of war, and all kinds of unrest. Share with our listeners what you wrote on that day.
Sometimes working in a third world country makes me feel like I am emptying the ocean with an eyedropper. And just when I have about half a cup full of water, it rains. More orphaned children from the north migrate to where I live. More abandoned and dead babies are found. More people are infected with HIV. It is enough to discourage even the most enthusiastic and passionate person. And yet the discouragement lasts only a moment, and God tells me to keep going, that He loves me, that He loves these people, that He will never leave or forsake any of us, not one, that my work is important to Him. I spent the day at the wedding of my friend Lydia. It was a beautiful celebration, not only of the love two people can have for each other, but also of the love God has for us. At the reception, there was a cake and singing and dancing, just as there would be at any American wedding. One thing that wasn't like an American wedding, though, was that the congregation of street children at the gate, all longing to join the party inside. I immediately felt suffocated inside the gates of the extravagant party. So for most of the reception, you could find me outside with the raggedy, dirty street children dancing and laughing and cuddling. Most people didn't like that I was associating with these children, the outcasts of society. Many of the fancily dressed guests at the wedding even came and told me that I probably shouldn't associate with these children, let alone kiss them and let them bury their faces in my hair. They're street children, the people would say, as if it was some kind of sin, as if the children could help it. We had so much fun, though. The children ate up every bit of attention I could give, danced as close to me as they possibly could, and lavished me with love. We spun and laughed until we ached and had to collapse in the grass outside of the place where the reception was taking place. Those who had been shy at first ended up snuggled close to my side, petting my hair or kissing my hands. The smallest ones fell asleep in my lap, despite the blaring music from the wedding. Those who could speak English wanted to know all about me and thanked me unnecessarily for spending time with them. They were so happy. I can't describe the new light in their eyes after all of our dancing. It's that light. It's that happiness. It's that love. Darling Emily, a little girl from the orphanage, is snuggled against my chest, fast asleep, and I can feel her heart beating against mine. It's that beat It's that warmth. It's that love. That love is the reason I just keep filling up my little eyedropper. Keep filling it up and emptying my ocean one drop at a time. I'm not here to eliminate poverty, to eradicate disease, to put a stop to people abandoning babies. I'm just here to love.
When I read that, and maybe it's because I've gone to some orphanages myself and visited these children and seen the faces, I was reminded of a great statement made by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He said there are two kinds of problems in life, those that are far away and those that are near. And I think for the Christian, for the follower of Jesus Christ, we are commanded to go near the orphan and the widow in their affliction. It is pure and undefiled religion. And that's what you experienced as you danced in the grass outside the gates, with the real party taking place out there instead of at the reception.
And of course, you had no idea as you were sitting with those children that you would share your story, that it would become a New York Times bestseller.
No.
That Glamour magazine would name you the 2012 Woman of the Year, all because you said, I want to go be near these kids and just love them.
Wow, huh? One of the reasons I love this story is that I know that God calls a lot of people to the mission field. And yet they're afraid to pay the price of where God wants them to go, to give up their life, their lifestyle, and frankly, money here in America. And sometimes their parents are unwilling to let them go. So when Katie took a stand to go to Uganda and adopt 13 kids, it wasn't just Katie who had great courage. It was also Katie's parents. I've learned it takes courage to follow God. It takes courage to allow your children to follow God. And may I also add, it takes courage to get involved in ministering to orphans. There are many scriptures that encourage us to reach out to the fatherless. Psalm 82:3 says, "Give justice to the weak and the fatherless." And then, as I mentioned in the interview, James 1:27, it's pure religion to visit the orphan and the widow in their affliction. And it says in there, in that passage, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. Just as there are Christians who fail to heed the call of God, who may need to be involved in missions, I think there are many who sense that God is calling them to get involved in foster care, maybe adopt a child, but they're never able to get beyond their fears. They allow their fears to control them, and they never step up. If that's you, could I encourage you to ask God how you can be involved in ministering and going near the heart of an orphan? I want to thank you for listening to this episode about Katie Davis. And I want you to be sure and come back for the second episode, because she talks about in more detail what it's like to tackle adopting 13 girls into her home. By this time, she was 23 years old. And I might add, she also met a guy who married her and became an instant dad to those 13 kids. One of the reasons I love this story is that I know that God calls many people to the mission field. And some of them, maybe quite a few, don't follow that call. I think many get afraid. Many don't want to give up their lifestyle here in America. And I love telling this story because here's a young lady who was coming out of the teenage years, making some adult decisions to follow Jesus Christ. Well, you know what? It takes courage to follow God, whether you're a teenager or an adult. And it takes courage to allow your children to follow God. It also takes courage to get involved in ministering to orphans. I'll tell you why. Because if you get close to the orphan, they're going to impact your heart. And it's going to demand sacrifice. And that doesn't go down easy. Barbara and I know. It's one of the most powerful things we've ever done, but also one of the most challenging. There are many scriptures that encourage us to reach out to the fatherless. Psalm 82:3 says, "Give justice to the weak and the fatherless." And in the interview, I mentioned that passage that I talked about at the beginning, James 1:27, that talks about religion being pure and undefiled before God, is to visit the orphans and widow in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from the world. When you go near the orphan, listen to me, you go near the heart of God. Just as there are Christians who fail to heed the call of God to be involved in missions, there can also be many who sense that God has called them to adopt a child, perhaps get involved in foster care. But unfortunately, they listen to their fears and they never step up and follow through. May I encourage you to ask God how you can be involved in ministering to orphans. Perhaps it's through giving, financially. That's a good thing. Orphan care takes a lot of money. Perhaps it's taking your kids and being a part of a missions trip, going near some kind of foster care ministry. I want to thank you for listening to this episode about Katie Davis. And I want to make sure you come back for the second episode where she talks more about her experiences in Uganda. And listen to this. And taking 13 girls into her home and adopting them by the time she was 23. You got to hear the rest of the story. And may I encourage you to subscribe to Inspiring Courageous Faith. I've got a goal to get to nearly 20,000 here shortly, and we're a few hundred away. If you got some friends that need to subscribe, tell them about us, and let's grow this thing. I think it's worth your time. And thanks for walking courageously with God in your own life and for being obedient. It's the best thing you can do.
Go to therainies.org/podcast for more inspiring courageous faith content.